Tonight we have the privilege of having Rahul Sonnad join us. Rahul is not just a serial entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur that is looking to change the way we view city-to-city transportation. His perspective on the future of mobility and transportation will broaden the way we look at the world around us. And it's this impact that is pertinent to our business. So please, join me, stand up, clap your hands, give a holler. Please join me in giving Startup Grind welcome to Rahul Sonnad. So hopefully you can tell that we're excited to have you here. Yeah. I try to hype it up because, again, I love having you here for this. There's so much to be gained from you in that short conversation we had in talking about this. So I'm excited for the entire community to hear what you have going on. Obviously, Tesloop is what we've been talking about to get people here. It's what your current venture is. But Startup Grind likes to go to the Wayback Machine. We like to hear about your early days, right? So before we get to Tesloop, let's talk about your upbringing, your family dynamic. What did your parents do for a living? Were you raised by entrepreneurs? Where did you go to school? Where did you grow up? No Oprah moments. There's no crying, I promise. Let's just start at the beginning.
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan. My parents came from India in the 50s, and I went to boarding school when I was 13, and went to college. I got kicked out of boarding school like 3 days before graduation. And then after college, I moved to the West Coast, did a bit of traveling to live in Japan for a year, traveled all over Southeast Asia and India, and then came back to Seattle and really started my career there. Yeah.
So what was your early career? Before we get to your first venture, what was your career journey leading up to your first venture?
So after college, I totally couldn't get a job. I had an anthropology major, and it was, I think, a bad economic time, but I could not find any work of any kind. So then I became a customs broker, which I thought was really glamorous because it was like international stuff, but it's basically like a tax accountant for importing stuff. And it was like, I was making $1,200 a month, and it was horrible. And then I moved to Seattle, and I got a job testing software at Adobe. Well, it was called Aldus at the time. And so you just pound on software and try to find problems. And I was really good at that. So I'd always, every week, if you found more than 20 bugs, you'd get a cookie, and I'd always get that. So I did that, and then because I'd learned a little Japanese, I decided, I either need to study more or I'll forget it all. So I did a master's in Japanese and computer science in the University of Washington, and then Microsoft was really looking, Japan was hot back then, and Microsoft was looking for anybody who knew anything about Japanese. So they recruited me to be the lead designer on all the Japanese versions of Microsoft Word. So I did that for 5 years, first Word and then all of Office. Went to business school. I applied to business school every year, and I never got in for 4 years. And the 5th year I got into Harvard. It was a different school every time. And so then I went there for a year, and dropped out because MP3s had hit, and I was super big music fan. I'm MP3s. I'm like, we need to create Spotify, even though I didn't know what the word was. And so I went back to Microsoft, and I was like, we need to create Spotify. And they're like, oh no, hosted software doesn't make sense. So I left Microsoft in early 2000, and that was the last time you could, with the PowerPoint, and a couple people just raised $3 million. So we did that, and we started what was supposed to be maybe Spotify / SoundCloud, but we got 30 days in, and we got a $60,000 legal bill for DMCA compliance review from our lawyers, and we're like, oh, so can we do it or not? And they're like, well, you know, it depends on. And so we're like, forget it. And
That's the best lawyer voice I've ever heard.
So we threw in the towel on music and we switched to video because even though the technology is really similar, the legal issues around video are very different than music. So we became what I'd consider to be the very first web service and one of the early like SaaS services, and basically built a online video publishing platform that was like for use by big video publishers. So Microsoft and CNBC and a company called Prime Media that I think is not around anymore became our early customers. We did the first video subscription service.
So, and you were not raised by entrepreneurs.
No, I was raised by wolves.
Raised by wolves, perfect. Wolves are scrappy.
Yeah, so my mother worked at a science lab. She was like a lab scientist, but they needed somebody to do data entry. So in high school, I did like 8 hours a day, summer job, data entry, which became calculator data, which became programming calculators. And then like I started programming their like DEC PDPs, which was like a type of computer. And so I was programming Fortran when I was like 14 full time.
And the reason I asked that is because I want to definitely get back to the platform. But where did that entrepreneurial spirit come from? Because a ton of people get a gig at Microsoft and they're set for life. Like they don't want to go anywhere else. It's comfortable. It's a major brand. Like where did that entrepreneurial spirit come from? What was it that made you want to do your own thing?
I don't know. Like I think I'd go to like Grateful Dead shows and I get really inspired, and that was my source of inspiration back then.
Understood. All right. So the platform. So SoundCloud, Spotify. You switched to pivot, or you pivoted to video.
Right.
Let's talk about the fundraising days. Like you said, I mean, in the year 2000, I think you said it was what?
Yeah. Before April, you could raise money.
Yeah. And so I mean, what was that world like at that time? I mean, last month we had Larry Namer talk about the Wild West. That was the 80s when it came to media. In the year 2000, when you were just raising money off a PowerPoint and an idea, I mean, it was a different world. So what was that like from a fundraising perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I think in history that was the craziest time because like you had kind of the $6 trillion valuation of companies all of a sudden pop up between like post Netscape IPO till April 2000. And like, so you'd never seen that type of, speculative wealth creation ever, in like, proportion to GDP or whatever. So, I mean, it was just super crazy all over the map, and companies were like, Akamai went from my friends, like 4 buddies at MIT to 20 billion in like 6 months or something. And then, 6 months later, it was worth like 200 million or something. Everybody, it was super crazy.
And where did you raise? So you were in Seattle when this launched.
Yeah.
So did you move down this?
No. That company was all in Seattle. So we built that in Seattle, and that was before Seattle. Like, that was early Amazon. So Seattle was not a startup-y space. Microsoft was cranking, and Adobe was there too. So there's some good talent, but it wasn't like there were 2 VCs in town.
So what? Staying in the platform, what was your go-to-market strategy? Because again, there weren't. Were there a lot of examples you looked to? Like, where did you get your idea on how to get user acquisition, and what was your business model, and where did all of this come from, and what was that like for you? Because it's just a different world then than it is now.
Yeah. So the important thing about the platform, and back then, just as a historical note, is like. Back then, your company was all about your URL. So like at like 2 a.m. in 1999, I registered theplatform.com and I got it. I'm like, cool. And like had I registered like dogfood.com, like it would have been a totally different business. But so we're like, oh, we're the platform. So what is that? And that build things on top of us. So that like truly inspired the companies. We're like, we're going to be a platform for building things on. We had no idea what we were doing. What was like really clear is that media was going digital for the first time. Like you had CDs, which was like a digital format, but not a digital delivery. So with MP3s, it became format and delivery, which fundamentally mean it took out all the friction. And it was like obvious to me once I saw an MP3. I'm like, oh, all the friction's gone. This will evolve into you just put everything online and play it. So like the concept of on-demand music or video or whatever, like to me was really obvious once, you know, you saw it in action in small scale. But then like I went to every record company and nobody cared, and like they're like, no, this will never work. And so yeah, I actually interned at Geffen Records, like on Sunset, like for free, and they're like, we can't pay you, but we'll give you valet parking. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Yeah, so, but like all the customer acquisition, like I didn't know what that word meant. Like we had no idea, like we were just like building. But once you have $3 million, you can build a lot, and then we just would talk to everybody, anywhere, like everybody at Microsoft. We had like 5 Microsoft accounts of, you just convince people to do things, and they'd be like, okay. So we were like really good at sales, just like pitching the vision, and people would be like, okay, I'll do that.
And I want to sit on the platform a little bit because, you know, now we have so many resources for user acquisition. You have so many ways to test a business model before we go live with, like, you know, with, you know, this world was before YouTube, and
it's before AdWords, it's before Facebook,
it's before everything, right? So can you share a little bit about what the business model was? Like, where did your revenue come from? How did you get them? Was it client facing? Like, share a little bit more about that business, because again, it was before the resources we have now, and that thought helps shape a lot of things the way that we think of things, given the resources we have now.
Yeah, so it was really simple. It was like SaaS, and back then, like nobody knew it. It's just like pay us $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 a month, and you can use our software. And yeah, so it's a SaaS software license, and that then we like made that up, you know. And Salesforce was obviously doing that a year or two before, but we had no idea they existed. So we made up SaaS. We didn't, not really what we thought it did, and we didn't know what it was, and we didn't think it was like good or bad or anything. It was just we knew this hosted software, like don't make people install software on the servers. Like our concept was, this is Hotmail for music, like not like install an email service. So we saw Hotmail, and once we saw Hotmail, I was like, that's what we need. Like, but it delivers music, not email. So yeah. So then, but then it was just like kind of we backed into sales, and nobody in the company had ever done a startup. Like everybody was just like, it was basically everybody was engineers, and I'd done like 9 months at business school, which was just a lot of drinking. But and the one thing business school I think I got from that is, like prior to business school, I was like, oh, these business school people must be really smart. They know how to start businesses. And then I like went there for a year to Harvard, and I'm like everybody was like half retarded, and I'm like, these are like the MBAs. I'm like, this is like stupid, and so yeah.
I hope this is being live tweeted. This is
awesome. Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, because back then, like actually Harvard was like super non-tech. It was like I was the only like West Coast tech person in my class of 300 or whatever, because I was in a little cohort. But so like, and back then Microsoft was like really cool, and like so, and I was experienced with software, and I'd shipped like 3 versions of Office, and it was $1 billion product, and I'd managed, so even though like at Microsoft I was like low level, nothing, like at Harvard I like knew stuff nobody else knew, like how to compile.
So that's awesome. So again, in that era, how many years were you working on the platform? leading up to the exit, or leading up to the idea of entertaining an exit?
Yeah, so we were cranking first year, we got all our money, everything collapsed, we had money in the bank, we were cranking, and then we ran out of money, and then it was impossible to raise money. Like I did 200 pitches, like in end of 01, 02, could not raise a penny. Like, and we had a good business. We had like Microsoft, Prime Media, CNBC, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America as customers. Like this is, for a startup like 1 year old, this is super amazing. And we had revenue, and like we had an amazing engineering team. No money. So we were forced to merge with another company that had raised 40 million from like Sun and Cisco, like had squandered 30 million, had no product, like customers, no talent, but they had 10 million in the bank and 60,000 square feet of office in Virginia and a lot of leased furniture. So we merged with them. And then I moved out to Virginia, and over the next year we just shut them down. So they acquired us, and we convinced the board to fire them all and shut them down. And basically, by the time we did that, like that cost $5 million. By the time they paid all their exits and everything, and then one investor wanted to shut us down, and we bought him out for $2 million. So we ended up with like $3 million. So that was like the most expensive B round ever. But like we changed the name back to the platform, and like, it was just like a year of like total random, unpleasant dilution, and I dragged the family out to Virginia.
I love the guerrilla mindset, though. Like I do. I love it. I love the creativity to it. There was, I think a lot of companies folded in that period of time when there was no fundraising.
Everybody folded. There was 30 companies doing video when we started, and by 04 there was nobody. It was us, and then like everybody came back, and YouTube started, and everything like that. So. Then there was the second generation, really driven by broadband. So pre-broadband, online video was possible, but a little stupid. And people were like, no, postage stamp video, nobody will ever do that. But the nice thing there is like, fundamentally, something is true or right. Like, yes, it is slow now, it will get faster. There will be more bandwidth. And then that happened very quickly. Like in 04, 05, like broadband went from like 5% to 30%. Like the cable companies figured out how to turn it on, and like you went from like dial-up to DSL or whatever. So that was really what enabled the industry to happen.
So the idea again, this is my first time hearing about the Virginia acquisition and that whole process. So why in that period of time? What was it inside of you that convinced you that was the move? Merge with this company in Virginia as opposed to just folding shop. Again, so many companies just folded shop in that period of time. What was it about the platform that you were so convinced of that this had to keep moving forward?
Well, that was an easy decision. Like the choice is like throw your baby in the river or give it up for adoption. You give it up for adoption. So. Clearly you want to live. Like there's no benefit of folding. At least sell it off, and it optically looks better than just complete failure, which I've also done. Folding was never attractive. Awesome. And we had 30 people working, and then they're all going to get fired. And back then, if we'd gotten fired, like nobody would have gotten jobs. It's not like now where you can walk down 3rd Street Promenade and get offers. It was really, really bleak. Like even Microsoft was contracting and stuff. So it was not like the price of folding then was very high.
So you go through the merger, you go through the exiting of the board, existing leadership. What was the progression up to the exit? How did that play out?
Yeah, so after we went back to being the platform. We just kind of kept on track, we weren't particularly innovative. We were just building software continually. We had a really good product manager who designed a beautiful web service, and it just made a lot of sense. It was, everybody wanted to start video, and building it yourself would take months and months and months. You could pay us $5,000 and get all that. And then we started getting very big deals like Verizon, Comcast, Telstra. We did all of Australian movies on demand, mobile video, everything. Because we were the only, everybody else had been out of business. And the new companies were all consumer companies, so we were the only industrial strength, B2B video platform. And then this company, Bright Cove, came afterwards, and they started in, I think, 2005, and they had this guy, Jeremy, was their CEO, who founded a company called Macro Media that was, back in the day, kind of a big success. But he was the best marketing person. He should have been CMO for Google or something, but he just hyped up the promise of digital media so hard, and he was so good at that. And he'd do that and go into every business, every studio in Burbank, every Carsey Werner, and every channel, and people would get really excited. And then I'd come in a week later, and I'm like, okay, you know what he said? We have it. so because they didn't have it, they were just they were 6 months old, and they didn't have any software. We've been building software for 5 years. So that worked out really well.
That is awesome. Do you send him a thank you card every year? All right, so that company sold to Comcast, if I'm not mistaken, for a great sum of money, and that's fine. So then it wasn't long to your next venture, though, right? I mean, it wasn't as if you had that exit and you sat back for a couple of years until your next one. I mean, it was fairly quick until your next one. Am I right?
Yeah. So Comcast bought us. It was a little over $100 million, which back then was a lot. And I'm our investors, which was Spark Capital, they'd come in 6 months before that, and they were our first real professional investors. Everybody else was random people, but they called themselves VCs, but they weren't really. But Spark Capital went on to superstardom of Oculus and Twitter and everything. But they're don't sell, you're gonna get twice as much in a year. And it was 7 years in, we were just tired, and we're no, we're gonna sell. So we sold to Comcast, and I was finally for me, it was really there's a mission, we're gonna make, media available everywhere on demand and everything. So, and I was finally, okay, now, all these companies that I'm trying to sell into, Disney, Cisco, all of them, I'm their biggest customer now because we're Comcast. So they have to take my meeting, they have to buy my stuff, because before, when you're a little startup, those companies just, you're 3 admins, 2 hours to meet with the guy for 2 minutes, and I'm perfect, we're just going to take over, because we were so far ahead on the software, and and then we saw YouTube was coming up, and they were still small. I think this was pre-bloody, what do you call it, Sunday, Lazy Sunday or whatever, so they hadn't exploded, and but you could see their growth, and it was fast. I'm okay, we gotta take care of them, and so basically I wanted to do Hulu. I'm okay, what we need to do is we need to stop selling software, and we need to make it free and give storage and bandwidth for free. And storage and bandwidth were really expensive back then. A gig of storage was $2,000 a month online. Now it's 15 gigs for free on Google in an email account. And that's only 15 years ago. So I'm we need to do Hulu, and my idea was a little less branded, where brands could do themselves. And I had all these ideas, and I'm okay, we got to do this, and I went to the management of Comcast that acquired us, and I'm here's the plan, here's what we're doing, and they're how much is that going to cost? And I'm I don't know. Let me figure it out. I'm okay, it's $30 million over 5 years, so $6 million a year. And they're that's a lot of money. And I'm you just bought it for like 108 million, like 30 million to like it's nothing compared to the opportunity in this market. And they're like, yeah, but the 108 million was capex, and this is opex. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know what that meant. It's like, but it's like, you know, the accounting where one they do as an expense on their bottom line public company, it hits, and the other doesn't. So they just had zero interest in, like they had no incentive to take any risk. And the people who acquired us are making like $1 million a year, and as long as they don't fuck up, they're set. So then like, that was like 3 months in, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done with this, but I have to stay like a year. So meanwhile, we were working with Verizon very heavily, and there was this card you could put in your computer and it would give you internet. And before that, you could never get internet in your laptop. And then at Microsoft, they had this product called Streets and Trips, which had a dongle that would give you GPS for your computer. So like I was the first person to have both GPS and internet, because I got an advanced card from Verizon because we were doing a big deal. And I was at Microsoft so I could get their stuff. So I had GPS and internet on my computer. Like I had the first smartphone. And I'm like, wow. And I remember we'd drive around and we'd do like internet, and like it was so amazing. And I'm like, this is gonna change everything. And so basically I just got obsessed with GPS. And then I'm like, oh, the phones are starting to get it now. And there were weird Motorola phones that had GPS back then. So that was the idea for the next startup.
And that next startup was Geodelic.
Yeah, so I moved down here for weather reasons, like once I quit Comcast. And and the nice thing is, after that exit, it was relatively easy to raise money. Like I probably pitched 20 people and got money instead of, hundreds. And so it was Geodelic, and we literally had these weird computers, and you could buy this thing where you put it on your head, and you could put your computer here and walk around, and we'd be walking around the promenade, like with GPS and internet. And this was like 2008, so the iPhone was maybe coming out, but the iPhone back then had no app store or GPS, so it was like the first version. So we were still the only GPS-enabled device, but we basically took it. Wherever you are, it'll show you the closest business to you.
And what was the outcome of the Geodelic?
So we cranked exact same model, SaaS service, web service. I'm like, instead of publishing video, you're publishing geo apps. I'm like, I got this one. And we got to about 3 million in revenue, same like enterprise sales, like Verizon invested, Shasta Ventures, we raised $11 million. We had like Korea Telecom as a customer. Universal Studios used us for the theme park app, Clear Channel at 40 airports. And we kind of got pulled in slightly different directions. So Korea Telecom wanted one thing, Universal wanted another, Clear Channel wanted another, Verizon wanted something totally crazy. And so like we had this core platform, but then we ended up kind of doing like professional services on the side, and then just like our biz dev deals started like wagging us all around in weird directions, and there was no like core product, there was a core platform. And then we put all of our effort into like a $5 million Vodafone deal. We were about to win it, and then like the management at Vodafone switched, and they're like, oh, now the Irish subsidiary that was going to contract with us, they don't decide now, the corporate decides, and it has to be agreed upon, and they like canceled the deal at the last minute, and that kind of caused us to very quickly collapse, like within 6 months. Yeah.
6 months, okay. So we talked about the platform, big exit, talk about Geodelic, lots of learnings of both of those, and that leads us to Tesloop.
Yep.
Right. So let's spend the remainder of time in Tesloop and talking about that. So for those that are not familiar with Tesloop, can you share what Tesloop is?
Yeah. So Tesloop started with the idea that Tesla is not just a car, but it's really an ultra low cost transportation platform that has some very innovative characteristics. It's, digitally, the cars are like servers. You can programmatically access them, and they had at that time announced they would start doing self-driving. They had the hardware for that in the car, and then they're also electric, obviously. So the idea was this really makes for an ultra low cost platform that can be software controlled. And so based on that, we're like, okay, you get a car, and now what's the highest value of this car? And we said, okay, the highest value is you drive it around the clock and fill it with people and charge them. Like, so we now drive cars 17,000 miles a month. And our first car has 320,000 miles on it. And like that thesis was proven out. They are ultra low cost. Like in 320,000 miles, the total fuel and maintenance cost has been $11,000. So, if that were S-Class, that would be $56,000 in routine maintenance, plus $36,000 in fuel, plus you'd throw the car away at $320,000, whereas we still have 5.5 years left on our warranty. So we kind of, for the last 2 years, have been running, kind of Greyhound meets Singapore Airlines, like shuttle services between LA. It started to Vegas. We learned Vegas was a little too far for optimal revenue, so we switched to San Diego, Palm Springs, Orange County from LA. And it's totally the case that it's incredibly cheap to run these cars at scale, and as soon as you figure out customer acquisition and have some software to do routing and pricing and everything like that, it makes a ton of sense. So we're now making $17,000 a month per car, which is, Hertz makes $1,000 a month a car, or somebody cranking in a Prius is making like $3,000, $4,000 a month in a car. So we're making a lot of money there. And so that's the business so far. But I think what we've recently realized that mobility is about to radically transform over the next 2 years.
So how did I love this story, and I think everyone should hear it. How did Tesloop come to be?
Yeah. So I have a son who was 16 at the time, and I was working on another startup that was going to be remote cameras, like where we take over your camera and do headshots remotely for you. And I had a little team of people working on that, and we were just like a month in, and then Hayden had just gotten his license, and he was like, I think I should get a car this summer. And this was like in April, and I'm like, that's a great idea. And I'm like, I think you should get a job to finance that car. And then he came back a couple months later, and after some bad ideas, and he's like, okay, if you buy me a Tesla, lease it, I'll drive people to Vegas this summer, and I will pay for the lease with the money I make driving people to Vegas. And I'm like, you'll kill yourself. So he's like, no, autopilot is coming in the cars, and that should keep me safe. So I said, okay, if you go ask Elon Musk if autopilot will keep you safe, and if he says it will, I'll get you the car. So I figured that was a pretty safe bet, without discouraging entrepreneurialism. So then we drive up with my photo startup team to Mountain View for the Tesla shareholders meeting, and Hayden buys a share of Tesla so he can get in, which actually didn't work, so we had to fake his shares. But security was low, still is low. So he went and he asked Elon, hey, is this car going to keep me safe? And Elon's like, yeah, in the beginning you're going to have to pay attention, but in about 3 years you'll be able to go to sleep in the car. And that, back then, that sounded crazy. In 3 years you'll be able to go to sleep in the car. Now it's like, of course, yeah. But so when I heard that, I'm like, okay, if that's true, that's kind of the biggest economic change in recent history. And so on the drive back, me and photo startup team joined Tesla.
And Hayden is here tonight, for those who have not had a chance to meet him.
Yeah.
I know he probably doesn't like attention, but Hayden, let's give a little shout out to Hayden real quick.
Back row.
Yeah, back row. There we are. There we are. So, and for those who didn't realize you were coming tonight to get a parenting lesson, that is an amazing lesson on raising your kids up in an entrepreneurial manner. And I love the fact that he had that idea. I want a Tesla at age 15. I probably would have just like shut my kid up in a room and be like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So I love that you encourage that. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's one of my friends who's, I'm not sure if you're a great dad, but you've got great optics.
That's fantastic. So what were the key learnings? So again, you're driving back, you have your team from your photo company, and you move over to Tesloop. What were key learnings from your previous ventures that you took into launching and growing Tesloop, right? I mean, you had great success with the platform, some learning opportunities with Geodelic. What did you take from those experiences into launching and growing Tesloop?
Yes, so the biggest learning was just like on the drive back, it's just like, we're gonna do this. Like it was just like a done deal by the time we were back in LA. We ordered the car, 3 months later we were launched, live, customers, we hacked everything together. So it was like really easy at that point to just go all in, and I knew how to do it, and I wasn't worried about will it work, will it not, whatever. It was just like, do it.
This was 2014, is that what this was?
15.
2015.
Yeah, so it's like 2.5 years ago. And we launched, on July 5th with paying customers on Craigslist ads, and we started getting 5-star reviews from everybody, and that never stopped. So, so I mean, like my feeling on startups is you just continually pitch everybody, and you just need to start thinking about it 24/7, and you get smarter about the space than everybody else because you're thinking about it more than everybody else, and then you're doing some activities related to it. So you just keep doing it.
I was just talking to one of the grinders here about that pitch. The more you do it, the better you get, the more refined it gets. And to Rahul's comment here, like it refines your thinking. Like
that's what I think is underappreciated. It's not that you get better at pitching; it's that, like, in explaining it, like many of my kind of revelations of the business have come in the course of trying to explain it to others. Yeah.
So what excites you? I mean, I know there's a ton of things that we want to pick your brain about the future of mobility and transportation. So what is exciting you right now about Tesloop? The vision for what mobility and transportation are going to be like. What is going on in your head on what the future looks like?
Yeah. So the mobility space couldn't be more exciting right now, because basically for the last 13 years, Tesla's kind of had this vision and they're setting the stage, and next year it's like all coming together. So again, you have the electric drivetrain, which has been functional for 3 or 4 years. But then you have a massive supercharging network. So you're getting 20 stalls here in, what's it called? Is it a B?
Bridgeport.
Yeah. So, and that means it's national. Before you had a couple in LA and none in San Francisco. Then soon there was one. But next year, we're going from 3 superchargers to 12 in Metro LA next year, which is huge. And then you have autonomy, which has kind of been up and down, and next year it's going to get really good. Teslas will drive on the highway pretty much by themselves in most circumstances by the end of next year. Not all of them, but it's driving will be most of the time effortless. And then you have these cars that you can query 4 times a second and know everything about it. So all of these things are coming together, and basically they're taking out all the friction of driving. So driving is going to become super, super cheap. And so then what that means, it's a software optimization problem. And the interesting thing about cars is you only use your car a little bit. It's 10% or 5% of the time. So you effectively have, you spend $50,000, let's say for a Model 3, but you get 10% use out of that. So if you could split that, a Model 3 would be $5,000, financed over 5 years or 8 years or something. So instead of being, $900 a month, it's basically like $100 a month at that, distributing the car. And that's effectively what is going to really quickly happen. You're going to have 80,000 Model 3s coming to California over the next 2 years. And our goal is whenever they're not being used, we're going to put them to use. And if it was a regular gas car and you bring it home and you're done for the day and you don't need it till morning, and like Hayden drives it to Vegas and back every night, at the end of the month, you've got 15,000 miles extra in your car and your car's worth half as much. But on the electric cars, there's no depreciation for miles. Those cars last more or less forever. So the economics of car sharing on electric are super, super transformative. It's like a 5x for just the electric, and then you've got the autonomy, and then you've got so everything's lining up, and it's going to make cities like this that are close to a big city that often people want to get to incredibly attractive, because the friction of getting from here to LA now is 2 hours of pain, in your head, and the traffic and parking and gas and all of that. That's going to turn in the next 5 years into a really super better than Uber experience and a clean electric car where you can work and everything like that. And so, so I think that's just incredibly exciting. And I'm particularly excited right now because I think we're a few months ahead of everybody else in realizing that. So, which gives us a big opportunity.
So right now, the farthest north you go is Burbank, I think is your closest depot, right? Your charging station.
So there is a big supercharger in Burbank. They just opened 3 weeks ago. We haven't started servicing that yet. So really, we don't go any north of downtown LA.
Got it. What is your game plan as far as expansion? I mean, because you're ahead, right? But it's in this market. Are you on the East Coast? Am I wrong in that?
No. So we're just in SoCal now. We're going to start in Northern California next month, and then we'll probably start in Santa Barbara also. So the game plan is we will get more cars and more routes, and there's obvious routes like Washington State, Tucson, Phoenix, Texas, South Florida that are great, the cities that are the right distance apart. Right now, the electric car is really good for cities 200 miles or less. More than that, you need charges in the middle, and it becomes less convenient, and there's some operational issues. But so we're going to expand our current product, which we now call Shuttlecraft, where we shuttle you back and forth. But the idea of taking all of the Model 3 owners in California over the next year and having them sign up to our program, which lets them, anytime they're not using the car, let us monetize it for them. We plan to do that in San Francisco and LA at very high scale, meaning thousands of cars on each side, which would still be a tiny fraction of the number of Model 3s out there. And if you have thousands of cars on each side, we think we can give you one-way rentals. If you want to rent a car from here to San Diego, that should be $50 one way. You put 4 people in it, that's $12.50, and you're not really going to have to drive because the car will drive itself, and the energy will be all included in that. So you're not paying for gas. You don't have to park it there, but maybe if you want, you could keep it and wander around there, and then you could say, I don't want to drive back, I'll take a Tesloop back, and you'll book a seat to get back. Or you'll fly to San Francisco, leave your car, we'll make money while you leave your Model 3, and when you go there, you get another one. So this idea of a fluid pool of Teslas that's allocated through sophisticated software that might, charge you $99 to go to Vegas at 8 p.m., but then maybe for $10, somebody can drive it back at 2 a.m. because nobody wants to do that, that's our expansion plan, to get a ton of Model 3s and figure out how to best allocate them, most optimally allocate them using software in either somebody's driving me in the car, I'm driving myself in the car, or and if I'm driving myself, it can be one way or it can be round trip. So there's like, really, if you look at everything, if you look at like how mobility works now, it's like I buy my car from Ford, and then I rent an Avis car, and then sometimes I Uber around, and maybe I Zip car, and then I take Amtrak to San Diego. Like, all of that can be replaced with one super cheap, convenient service that will cost you less than owning a car. And that can all happen, like, for some people next year, and for most people in the next 3 years.
That's amazing. So my last question before we open up to everyone else here. Right now, with that growth, with that on the horizon, with what your vision is, what is your greatest challenge right now?
Yeah, the greatest challenge is just there's like so many fronts of things going on, and kind of time balancing, like fundraising with customer satisfaction, with hiring, and you tend to sub-optimize everything because like we're so small yet that we're not kind of in the zone where like we got people to do everything. So and I particularly bottleneck the company in a lot of things because again, we're not mature enough where everybody can start doing things. So as a kind of co-founder, it's the allocation of time and just trying to balance everything.
If you have a question, raise your hand so I can come out to you with the mic. My last question, how big is your team? You said that still small, not a lot of resources. How big is your organization right now?
Yes, so it's a little unusual because we have drivers, and we have ground control, and we have customer service. So there's about 60 people in those roles, and then there's about another 10 core people, like half engineering, half non-engineering. So it's about 70 total.
With all the stuff that's been talked about, with your excitement about Tesloop, mobility, transportation, everything going on, what is a key takeaway that you can leave with our Startup Grind community here? Whether it be in the space you're playing in, or whether it be about starting a new company, participating in a startup weekend, whatever the case may be, what is something that they can take away and be like, I didn't think of that before?
That's a hard
It's on the spot, I know, but
So I think like the critical thing if you're starting a new endeavor is to there's a ton of good ideas, but there's a lot of good ideas that are not particularly executable. Even if they might make a ton of sense at scale, but there's no way to get there. There's no path to get there. So like when you think about starting a business, you really you need to understand, okay, what could this be in 10 years? But then once you understand that, I would, again, forget everything after a year and really focus very short term on what you need to do and validate things. And it's almost certain that whatever direction you're heading in, there's either this way or this way is slightly better, but you don't know which way that is. So that has to be your focus of honing it in. And it might just be how you tell your story, like simple little things are in communicating the idea are very transformative. And if you're doing like, the type of startup where you have to convince other people to work for you and give you money and everything like that, it's all about communication. So like your communication skill of telling the idea in a way that somebody else can understand it and it resonates with them and it makes sense to them given their background, like that's where your biggest value is. So I've probably spent like 500 hours working on my pitch deck, and literally every 2 weeks it changes. It gets better, and sometimes, and so that communication of explaining the idea and continually doing that, validating it, course correcting, like if it's a big idea that you want to do, you've got to convince people that it makes sense of all types, your employees, your founders, your everybody. So you can't spend too much time refining your communication.
Awesome. Startup Grind community, let's hear it for Rahul Sonnad.